Hello and welcome all. Thrilled to see you here today. So glad you could join us. My name is Mercy Procaccini. I'm a program officer with the OCLC Research Library Partnership, OCLC Research. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Case Studies of Research Information Management at U.S. Institutions. Before we get started, I have just a couple of meeting logistics to cover. To eliminate background noise and make it easier to hear the presenters, you are in a listening-only mode during the presentation. If you have any problems during the webinar, please submit a chat message to the host, and I'll do my best to help you. Our panelists will present, and we'll take questions at the end, but we encourage you to submit questions as we go along. So to get warmed up, I'm going to ask everyone here to find their chat window, and you're going to do that by hovering near the bottom of your screen. This is going to pull up several circle icons. Look for the one that looks like a speech bubble. Click on that. That opens up the chat window. And what we'd love to do is we'd love to get to know who's here today. So please introduce yourselves. Please share what you hope to find out today. If you're attending as part of the group, let us know that. Let us know where you're joining from. And then type your comment in the text box. Change the send option to all participants. And so you want to make sure it's all participants, not all attendees. And click send. This will ensure that the panelists and all attendees can see your question. One final note, we are recording this webinar and we'll make the recording available online afterward, as well as the slides. So you'll have the opportunity to watch it again and share with your colleagues. So with those housekeeping details attended to, I would like to acknowledge the OCLC Research Library Partnership, which both underwrites and inspires our work. Attendees of this webinar are from the OCLC RLP. Thank you for your continued support and input into our work. Both of these are crucial to our success. And now I will turn things over to my colleague, Rebecca Bryant, Senior Program Officer with the OCLC Research Library Partnership, who will kick things off for us.
Hi, thanks, Mercy. Okay, so I'm going to give a little bit of preface for the presentation. So again, my name is Rebecca Bryant. I'm Senior Program Officer with OCLC Research. My areas of interest embrace research support topics, including research information management. And together with a number of collaborators, OCLC Research has recently completed an arc of research related to research information management, or RIM, and I want to point you to these and to the short URL oc.lc/RIM. All of these are publicly available. The first of these research reports offers a definition of research information management and defines the different use cases that RIM practice may embrace. The second report is a deeper dive into European practice, describing RIM practices and the use of persistent identifiers in Finland, the Netherlands, and Germany. That's the Convenience and Compliance report. And finally, the last report was a joint effort with CRIS, and it was a global survey of RIM practices in which we received nearly 400 responses from more than 40 countries. It provides a comprehensive view of RIM practice and also sharpens our view of regional distinctions. And my co-presenters today have been collaborators on one or more of these publications. So we operate from a broad definition of what RIM is: the aggregation, curation, and utilization of metadata about research activities. By working with this definition, we're able to embrace a number of regional terminologies and practices because all of them at a minimum include the aggregation of publications metadata. And that's where you'll see many of these overlapping terms like CRIS, or RIS, or RNS, or RPS, or FAR, Faculty Activity Reporting. It's a veritable alphabet soup. All of those things we want to include when we think about what is research information management, even though they actually can be really different case studies. And so today's webinar offers 3 case studies from 3 different U.S. institutions, and it's a reprise of a presentation the 4 of us gave earlier this year at the biennial ACRL conference, which was held in April in Cleveland. And then from there, that's sort of my preamble, and I want to turn it over now to Jan Franzen, who's going to provide the first case study.
Okay, thank you so much, Rebecca, and thank you everyone for attending. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do here at the University of Minnesota. This is me. You can see my title there. I'm the Service Lead for Research Information Management Systems. We have decided that RIM is the one that we're going to use out of that alphabet soup, and we're going with that. So let me tell you a little bit about how we got started. The University of Minnesota is a big place. We've got 5 different campuses. The Twin Cities is the largest of those. We've got lots of undergraduates, but also many people who are graduate students and also researchers in addition to our teaching faculty. In any place that big, you've got a lot to keep track of. It's really hard to find people when you need to connect with somebody who has expertise. And really it was determined that they needed some entity on campus that understands the scholarly publication world, knows how to curate and archive data, has figured out how to implement standards so data are consistent, and has some expertise in helping people search for and find what they need. Who on earth on our campus could help with that? Well, of course, it's the libraries. So what happened with us, this is Walter Library on the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus. That's where I'm sitting right now. And this is one of many of the libraries that we have in our system. And they came to us, they meaning the deans of the different colleges in the Twin Cities, came to us, the libraries, to say, we need something, we'd like for you to license and administer this system for us. They originally came to us and said, we would like Elsevier SciVal. We did a pilot, a 3-year pilot starting in 2012 with SciVal experts. And then when Elsevier acquired Pure, we moved to Pure in about 2015, the middle of the year that year. Right now, we are covering all 5 of the University of Minnesota campuses. Only Duluth and the Twin Cities are visible in our instance right now, but behind the scenes, we do have faculty, researchers, graduate students who are employed in some research-related position, and then staff members who are likely to publish research, like librarians, for example, are all covered in our system. So again, that 3-year pilot, the deans requested it. We just did Twin Cities. We partnered with the Vice President for Research as well as the individual colleges, and the libraries handled administration. We had regular communications going out to faculty from the Vice President for Research and the Dean of the Libraries, reminding people that they had profiles, asking them to review them, asking them to add missing information, and so on. Now we've expanded to all 5 campuses, and our funding is central, so we're no longer going around to each of the deans asking them to kick in some money. It is a central resource for us. It's still administered by the libraries. Due to staffing changes, we don't have as much involvement from the OVPR as we used to. They're still our partners, but really now they're one of many partners, and I'll talk a bit about that as I go on. We still do the marketing and email and the user support from the libraries, and I'll tell you a little bit about how we do that. So originally the intent was we want to find a way for researchers to find each other on this vast campus with so many different things going on. Is it doing that now, several years later? Well, maybe. We don't really have a good way of knowing that. Nobody comes to us and says, yeah, thank you so much. Well, actually, sometimes they do come to us and say, thank you so much for Experts at Minnesota. That's how I found my collaborators. But it's only those few anecdotes that we have. We really don't have a good way of knowing if people found each other with experts and then went on to do great research. We certainly hope that happened. But we do know that as we've been working on building this great data set, we have lots and lots of publications by lots and lots of current and former University of Minnesota researchers. We have author names, their university IDs, increasingly their ORCID IDs, departmental affiliations, all of that from our PeopleSoft system. We have publication information. We can usually get things like the open access status, Sherpa Romeo color, things like that that are useful for librarians as we look at our collection practices. We can get citation counts, alt metrics. We can kind of see what's trending. So we have a lot of wonderful data here. Now, as we get more data and as that quality improves, we've also seen a growth in the use cases and the ways that people want to and are making use of the data. So right now, our big challenges are finding out what people are doing and then helping them do even more. So often we have people who are using or trying to use data from different publication sources, sometimes from experts at Minnesota, sometimes trying to harvest things from other sources. And we're trying to find out about those things. Where are people doing that? And then we're trying to spread the word to those who aren't doing things yet but could benefit from that. So luckily we have this wonderful set of people, our liaison librarians. That's sort of my secret weapon. They're the people who are on the front lines talking to people about what they could do with research information in addition to helping support their research in other ways. To give you an idea of how we're structured, I'll show you this. I'm at the top of this diagram, the Research Information Management Service lead. But I have a lot of people who are working on experts at Minnesota in different ways. We have a team called the RIM support team. We specifically named them that rather than the expert support team because they also support things like ORCID or different ways of using research information that aren't necessarily based in experts at Minnesota. They do email support. They do special projects, like if we have a batch of reports that aren't published anywhere except in our Digital Conservancy, and we want them to be visible to the community through experts at Minnesota, they'll help with adding those. We have 5 people who are library staff people who, for the they're a combination of liaison librarians and then people who are doing desk or online support in other ways, our traditional I'll say question point staff. We have one person who works part-time for us, just a few hours a week doing data remediation. And then we have a set of librarians called the Research Service Coordinators. They're liaison librarians who support different kinds of research services, including experts at Minnesota. There's one in each of the 6 discipline-specific units that we have in our library. And they keep everything coordinated. They make sure liaisons are ready to have conversations about different kinds of research services. And then, of course, our liaisons I've mentioned, they are the connectors to everything else. A little bit about what I do along with the developer that we have working with us. I'm not going to read through this. Basically, I keep things going, I keep the system going, communicate with the vendor and with our staff to figure out what we need and manage the data remediation projects. Our developer has been working on automating the synchronization between our PeopleSoft HR system and experts at Minnesota. We do run that now on a nightly basis, which is awesome. So when somebody joins the university, they have an experts at Minnesota account almost immediately. We also take the data that we have in our vended system and put it into our own internal Oracle database so that we can make use of it in other ways and have our own copy in case anything should ever happen. What we've been doing to get the word out is putting everything together into a website, or at least some examples of things that you might do with research information. You can find that at that link, z.umn.edu/RIM use cases. It's very much in work. You're going to see a few, under construction type things in there. But what we've tried to do is put in a page for things that are that one unit is doing, but we think could help out other units as well. We propose, here's the problem that they came to us with. Here's how we used research information to help them out. Do you want to do something like this? Contact us. And then hopefully we get follow-up from there. So that's one of the ways, again, on this large campus that we're trying to figure out how to get the word out. And now I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Annie.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Annie Rao, and I'm the Interim Head of Collections and Research Services at Syracuse University. In that role, I have a team of subject liaisons, collections librarians, and we work with all of the university-aligned research initiatives that come out of the libraries. I'm going to begin by just giving a little bit of an overview of Syracuse University because it is very integral into sort of where we are with our research information management system and the implementation of it. So we're a private research university. We're about 2,000 students between graduates and undergraduates. And in 2015, we were moved from an R2 to an R1 Carnegie classification for research universities. So we are right now in a period at our university where we're aggressively building infrastructure that sustains our research goals and our research aspirations. And our research information management system is a piece of that infrastructure. Along with building that infrastructure, we're also in a period of sort of culture shift, which has its own impact on how we've been able to use and implement and move through projects with our research information management system. We have not historically been a research-focused institution, so this has been quite a shift for lots of parts of our campus. So why did we implement this? Well, these were our initial project goals. And looking from these initial project goals, probably many of your campuses have similar goals to this. You know, if you're looking at sort of big general goals for an institution, find expertise, highlight the expertise you have on your campus, grow collaborations, grow research. This is not unique to where we are right now at Syracuse. And we had some challenges that we were trying to address while doing this. So our first challenge was that we had no systematic way to identify expertise. When we began our implementation of experts at Syracuse, and we also use Elsevier's Pure system, so ours looks very similar to University of Minnesota's, but at a much smaller scale. When we started this, we had a interim VPR, and when he assumed his role, he had no systematic way to see the research landscape across our campus. So during his interim period, he felt that that was really something he needed to solve for when we had a permanent appointment of a VPR, and we were able to do that by the time our new VPR had started. We also at Syracuse are organized into 9 schools and colleges that very much run independently. So when you're looking at our web presence, it's very difficult to see if our College of Engineering does any work whatsoever with our physics department that's based in our College of Arts and Sciences, or things like that. So we wanted to be able to highlight that even within our institution, we had a lot of collaboration going on. Our second challenge that we were trying to solve through this was matching funding. So Syracuse is unique in the RIM community in that we selected a tool that connects researchers to funding opportunities based on their past work. And for us, that was a very important part of why we selected the tool we did and some of the original goals of implementing this. Prior to our implementation, we had a campus voluntary staff retirement program. We used to have a person in our Office of Research who knew our active researchers, knew their interests, and manually passed on funding opportunities to individuals or groups that she thought was appropriate. She took advantage of that voluntary staff early retirement program, and we no longer had that function happening on our campus. So we knew that relying on one person to do that was not a way to build a research program moving forward. And our third challenge was to reduce burden of tracking this kind of information. We knew that there were multiple out-of-date profiles around campus for many of our researchers, and that units were creating and recreating systems all over campus for trying to track the same type of information that can be tracked in a research information management system. So that was another one of our goals, was to reduce the number of times we were tracking the same information across our campus. So how did we do it? So at Syracuse University, we took the team approach to implementing the system. It would not have been possible for us to do it without this team made up of the Office of Research, the Office of Sponsored Programs, and the libraries. We were involved, the three parts were involved from the very beginning in it, and we're still involved today in the administration of the system. While we were implementing, we also reached out further than this to engage stakeholders in campus IT, the provost's office, and other places on campus that we knew we needed to be aware of the project. But these three entities make up sort of the core administration of our research information management system. Here you can see outline the responsibilities of each one. And one thing that makes this a little bit unique is that each group probably has a different main goal for why they're involved in that, which can sometimes make it a little bit complicated. For the Office of Research, their primary reason is to promote networking and to facilitate the growth of research. For our Office of Sponsored Programs, it was really to promote the usage of the funding discovery module, which is part of our system, and match researchers to funding opportunities. For the libraries, we're really invested in seeing a system of record for the work done here on our campus. So that can be somewhat contentious, not contentious, but it can create an interesting dynamic when all three of us have a different top goal, even though we all see the same goals across the board. So we began with a rollout in 2015. We did product investigation and went through the contracting phase. The libraries was involved in this from the very beginning. In January 2016, the entire project team had to be reassembled and revised. As I mentioned, that voluntary early retirement program, most people initially involved in this also took advantage of that. So we had to sort of start again in January 2016. That winter and spring, we did all of our initial data loads. And then in May 2016, we had a faculty rollout. We have had to be very clear and very transparent about who is included in our instance of experts at Syracuse and who is not. We do not have every faculty member in our system, and we've continually sort of debated and discussed when to expand or how or what the best way to expand is. At this point, we do not have everybody in there, so we do have to be very clear about who's there and who's not. This first criteria may look a little funny for anybody who's not familiar with the Syracuse University campus. We do touch the SUNY, State University of New York Environmental Science and Forestry School, as well as their upstate medical campus, which are two different universities. And if you walked off our campus, you could walk onto either one of those. And so we have tons and tons of natural collaboration that happens between those three entities. And so we have had to say to a number of faculty not affiliated with Syracuse University that they're not able to be included in our expert system. We also don't want empty profiles out on the web. So we want to make sure that the faculty that we are profiling have an active publishing record. And we determine that either by having a Scopus profile, and therefore things will be automatically imported from Scopus into their profile, or that somebody has a CB or a personal department website that shows that they're have an active publishing record. Particularly if there's someone whose profile will not be fed automatically by Scopus, because that is one way of getting information into Pure, but not the only way. We need to make sure that they're willing to manage adding information themselves. And then we ask that the Associate Dean for Research from their college, as well as the VPR, just sign off on their inclusion, which has never been a problem. As long as people are willing to do so and meet these other criteria, we include them in our system. In 2018, we renewed Pure. We called the first 3 years of our first 3-year contract our pilot phase. It was determined at the end of our pilot phase that we did want to continue supporting a research information management system in conjunction with the Office of Research and the Office of Sponsored Programs. So we renewed our contract and we expanded the team within the libraries for support for this. So it was determined that supporting experts at Syracuse would become a part of the liaison librarian role. So for the first 3 years, we really kind of just had the administration team answering questions, training faculty, talking about it in meetings and things like that. And then we decided to expand that beyond. To get the liaison librarians up to speed on using experts at Syracuse, we had a year-long plan for bringing them up to speed. So in September of 2018, we outlined that we would have an annual assessment goal that would be tracked as part of our university assessment framework that would relate to their direct involvement in experts at Syracuse. So the goal was that we were going to include all of the subject liaisons in the system. The subject liaisons would be responsible for adding their bio, their photo, and then 5 activities or research outputs about themselves. So we had a series of trainings from our peer customer consultant on both end user training, so how people would upload their own stuff, and then some train the trainer sessions on how they might help others using the system. Liaisons are not expected to do any data entry, but they are expected to be able to answer basic questions about experts at Syracuse and refer as appropriate to the administration team. We scheduled a few group work sessions where everybody brought their CVs, got together, and plugged away at getting their profiles up to date. And then in June 2019 was the end of this time period, and we had to report on our assessment data. It resulted in all of the liaison librarians, except for those who would be retiring within the year, participated and met the outlined goals of being able to do some basic work within the system. In the summer of 2019, the administration team also further expanded from the library side, and my colleague Brenna Helmstetler, our information studies librarian, has joined the administration team and taking an active role in administering it from the library side. So was it successful? In general, I would say yes. We have anecdotes similar to Jan where people tell us that they're using the system to find what's going on around campus. They're using it to find people they didn't know already. They're using it to see connections between schools and colleges they didn't previously know about. So in that case, yes, it is successful from the anecdotes we hear. This particular college, our Falk College of Sports and Human Dynamics, has been an example where we think it's extremely successful. The college itself has done a college-wide adoption with support of the college administration. They require that faculty use this tool for reporting to the dean. The data is then turned into a monthly newsletter, and we just this week heard that it now drives a portion of the annual CV update for this particular college. So this college's administration said to the faculty, you may not email us anymore to tell us about your good all the good work you're doing. We want to see it coming all the way through here, and these periodic newsletters that get created by their marketing team have really encouraged other faculty to keep up their profiles. So they take the data, they produce the newsletters. When somebody says, hey, my recent publication wasn't included, they say, well, you didn't include it in Experts at Syracuse, so include it and it'll be in the next newsletter. So that is the only way that they're getting information from their faculty about their work. We've also felt that it's successful from a library's Office of Research relationship standpoint. Our Vice President for Research at Syracuse University has been known to say that the libraries is his biggest collaborator on campus, which we feel is a good place to be. And we've also been able to use the success of this project to advance other discussions that we had not been able to advance prior to that, including OA policy discussions and data repository discussions. But having had a win with the research enterprise definitely helped us move forward things that we were interested in. And then there's parts where we have not been as successful. So this is a portion of campus where I feel like we've been less successful, particularly around our visual and performing arts and our humanities. We did do a lot of work one year to get visual and performing arts faculty into Experts at Syracuse. They had an associate dean who was very keen on seeing their experts listed right along our science and engineering experts. We did have to do quite a bit of work to help them train, to get their work in there. Our music librarian has a background in cataloging and proved very helpful in her understanding of how to make their work into structured data that can be represented in Pure. So she developed a very in-depth guide for visual and performing arts to get their work in there. But there's not been a mandate from this part of campus, and that fizzled out probably after we did our initial rounds of training and creating this guide. We have just recently begun revisiting discussions with other portions of our humanities faculty, and so we will see how that pans out in the next few months. So I'd say with mixed success, but generally pretty successful. And I believe this is my last slide.
Good morning, everybody. This is Malaika Aknam from the University of Arizona Libraries. I'm in our Office of Digital Innovation and Stewardship, and I am the project lead for our RIM system on campus. We are still debating the use of the term RIM and what system or systems constitute RIM, but I will be describing to you what the lead system has been thus far. So I'll give you a little bit of context around the size of the University of Arizona. I'm going to talk about our intention with RIM because our approach is very different from the approach taken from University of Minnesota and Syracuse University. So I want to talk a little bit about that context. I also want to give you a few screenshots so you can understand how our system works and looks different from the Pure system, the benefits and impacts, a little bit about who actually owns a system like this on campus and who's involved in those conversations. And then lastly, I want to talk about the opportunities for libraries within this space. So the University of Arizona, a fairly large institution. We have a number of undergraduate and a large graduate population, a number of different programs that are offered. More interestingly, when we're talking about the RIM system and our approach to it is actually the number of units that we're working with on campus. So we have 22 different colleges or faculty units, which represent roughly 95 different departments, not including departments within our colleges of medicine. We do have 2 separately accredited colleges of medicine. We have one on the Tucson campus and one up in Phoenix. So they are both handled independently of each other. We're also a responsibility-centered management campus, and the reason I mention that is because data really matters on our campus, and data that we're putting into the system or that we are tracking in the system needs to align with all other data sources and data numbers from whatever other source and data warehousing systems we have on campus. And that becomes very important, as you'll see later in the conversation. In terms of the numbers of faculty or other professionals that we are tracking in the system, we have roughly 3,000 folks on campus who fall into our promotion tracks, be that tenure or our non-tenure track faculty who are eligible for promotions. We also have a number of other appointed professionals, our continuing status folks who are members of our general faculty. We also have a number of clinicians. What's not represented here is also a number of folks who are represented in our 2 medical schools who are what we call on campus a DCC, meaning that they're a defined affiliate of the university for particular roles that they are playing. And we actually track a number of those professionals as well. We also have many of our graduate students, our PhD students in the system. So we're pushing upwards of managing about 10,000 user accounts each academic year who should be actively reporting in the system. So our RIM story began back in approximately 2012. There had actually been many conversations prior to that because the approach was actually focused internally, where University of Minnesota and Syracuse were both focused on the profile aspect and the expert discoverability on a more external basis, or a more public basis, our story began internally about we have a lot of faculty data floating around on our campus. It was mostly done in our paper formats as part of our annual review processes on campus that were required, or our post-tenure review processes on campus. And we wanted to get a handle on that. So the intention for our campus was actually to move our current annual review processes to an online reporting system. And this is very important because we have a very distributed governance model on our campus that allows every unit, so every college and department, to individually decide how they will actually govern or manage their review processes within some broad guidelines, such as you must be reviewed in the areas of research, service, and teaching. Beyond that, they get to decide how they handle review. So part of the goal in this tool was to help make the annual review, both the workflow and the data, more immediately available to the department and college administrators, so the department heads, the deans, the associate deans, and to the upper administration. It was also to bring alignment to our annual review process and our promotion and tenure process, which was also looking to move towards a more online approach. And we are still in that process, actually, of moving that to an online approach. We also needed to reduce redundancy around reporting known data. So we were hearing a lot from the faculty, how come I have to report data that the university already knows about me, such as their teaching, how many classes they were teaching, how many people they were advising. Why do I have to recreate that as part of my annual review on promotion and tenure processes when you already know that data? So these were some of the goals for our RIM system. And as I already pointed out, there was also this evolving data tension that the faculty data was largely being held and reported in paper-based CVs being submitted as part of a review process. And we were also hearing a lot of need for and desire for, well, don't you have this data? Can't you put it and feed it into other systems on our campus? Can't we make use of our data in better ways? So we established, and I'll share with you what a faculty evaluation and activity reporting system is. And I'll just point out the acronym. In this case is FEARS, and definitely is not a good name. So be very careful how you name your RIM system as you start moving into it. We did not name it FEARS, but I just find it kind of amusing that the acronym could go very counter to the approach that you're wanting to take. So our system is called UAVK or UAVTI. I have the website listed there in case you want to learn more information. We do not use the pure product, as I mentioned before. We actually license the Faculty 180 product from Interfolio. We have just finished our renewal for another 3 years, so we will actually, we will have been in the system 7, 8 years coming up this next year. In 2013, we launched our first phase. It was a pilot phase with 5 colleges who were already involved in an online reporting system, usually homegrown, that they had developed. In phase 2 in 2014, with learnings from that pilot, we launched to our main university campus, not including our primary College of Medicine and our College of Law. Those colleges came a year later in 2015. And then we actually had our College of Nursing with a late launch. We had some academic changes going on, and so they joined us in 2016. So when we're talking about a RIM system, we're talking about a lot of different types of information and a lot of different sources. So this is a graphic from our Research Information Management report that we put out, and the role of the library's role with RIM systems. So we have a number of different things. We have research output, so the different scholarly publications, patents, things like that. We have grants and other projects. We have equipment, statements of impact, researchers and their collaborations, instructional history. We have service activities, awards, media recognition. So there's a wide-ranging set of information that needs to be collected for purposes of annual review and promotion and tenure reviews. So we were being very conscious to include as much of this data as possible in our setup. So the red check marks just indicate areas where we are actively either recording or integrating data feeds from our system. So in this case, we are not currently working on equipment, and we are not currently working on media reports at a standardized level across the institution, although some of our units do choose to report those activities. To let you see what our system looks like, so you have a little bit of context, I took some screenshots. This is what happens when a faculty member logs in. This happens to be a member from our College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. You get a listing of different activities. So on the menu on the left, you have different areas. You can see there's a profile, there's activities. They can access evaluations, reports. They can create videos and bio sketches. There is a search to find colleagues. And then they can add administrative access for somebody to enter data on their behalf or have proxy access to their account. Within the middle section, you see a number of sections for which they can report data. So starting with workload data, the second one listed is actually a customized section that was created just for that college. So only people associated with that college can report that data. The other sections are sections that are standard across the university. So you can see we have everything from advising to grants and other standard types of areas. When you go into one of these sections, you then get a screen that allows you to basically assign a start and an end semester. You can assign something as ongoing if appropriate. This is a mentorship section. And then you have fields that you can fill in. So again, we can create custom sections, or we can standardize it and then make that section appear to everybody in the university. And then the last subscreen that I have here is just showing the output. So as data is entered, you can choose a period for which you want data to be displayed. This is a sample of that mentoring data and how it would be displayed on a activity report or a CV if you included that section. So the institutional benefits for this system. Certainly, it allowed us to better support the promotion of faculty work. We had a much better record, we had a much better access point to really understanding the work of our faculty, and for the faculty to be telling us that story rather than relying on the word of mouth kind of system of contacting a dean who contacts a department head who says, oh, here's somebody who's doing something right now, and maybe forgets about the work that had been done a few years prior or might still be in development. Better communicating of departmental impacts, of really being able to say who is doing what in what areas and or in what types of work, whether that be outreach, whether that be research. People could really go forward. Public value of the institution, alignment with reporting and P&T. Faculty benefits and highlights, again, reducing the redundancy of data information, the data transparency of the review workflows, facilitating better reporting, all parts of the system. Whoops. So the question for us was, would people actually report data? And so this is just showing for the different sections that we have been watching the trends, and indeed people are increasingly reporting data. There's a dip on the last year because we took this in the middle of 2018 when people were still reporting, but the trend is clearly showing that we were going to max the prior year's data. Impacts, improved data quality, having more data, enabling us to actually reuse people's data, which was one of the goals that we wanted to be able to do, standardization of activity reporting. Some of the things we've been able to do from that include setting up our own experts or profiling system based on the data coming out of our annual reporting system. So this is our UA profiles, a sample of that where you can see the person's profile, you can see selected data from that system, and the faculty member can opt out of individual data elements if desired, which was an important request from our faculty. We've also enabled an undergraduate research section where they can post their student engagement opportunities for working in laboratories or other places. And then our graduate college is running a pilot for additional advising and tracking of additional advising opportunities with students. So who owns this on campus? So our provost office was a primary lead in this. the University Libraries as a co-owner, as well as our information technology and services, but there were a number of other key stakeholders. Institutional assessment and analytics, the deans and department heads, Office of Research, our UA Global, centers and institutes. We had a wide-ranging number of stakeholders. So how can libraries be involved? So prior to implementation, there was a lot of research and data analysis we contributed to, a lot of licensing and scholarly communications conversations that we contributed to, creating a holistic perspective across the different disciplines, again, representing disciplines that may not have been well represented in other data sources and looking for those different types of opportunities. During implementation, we were able to talk about researcher identity and impacts and the needs to manage that, metadata, data analysis, a lot of training and or instructional space to be offered, and awareness of different faculty cultures. And then long-term, how can we help? Stewardship and data governance has been a huge issue on our campus, and so the library is very squarely centered in that conversation now. Scholarly management in terms of how can we use our publication data that we've now been collecting from our faculty, training and instruction opportunities, and again, data analysis and visualization coming out of the system. And with that, I know that was quick, but I want to leave time for questions.
Okay, that's great. I think we have, this is Rebecca again, we have just one last slide before we open it up for questions. And as you can see from a lot of our discussion here, libraries are very involved with research information management, but they're not every exclusive stakeholder that's involved. And so we're beginning a new project where we are trying to explore the relationships between the library and other stakeholders, and to better understand the operations goals and pain points of non-library stakeholders in research information management, but also in other types of activities like research data management. Units like the research office, institutional research, campus IT, and many more. There's more information at the link here. We're just starting this project. We're going to be involving members of the Research Library Partnership, so you've probably seen some information come through our various listservs. If you have questions or if you have a story you'd like to tell, then we're collecting those too. Just give me a contact. And there, I think our last slide is just some of our references here, and I think we will open it up for questions.
Yes, thank you. All of you obviously inspired a number of questions, so I just wanted to get started with some questions earlier in the presentation, including a question about Pure. Is it the case that Scopus is the source for the publication metadata? And if so, what has the response been from faculty in disciplines not well represented in that database? And with some additional clarification, this could be extended also to other types of scholarly output beyond monographs and chapters, performances, AV material, etc. Basically, are they finding that the system works well to represent folks in the humanities and the arts, and is that a priority for them at this time? And I think that started out as a question for Jan.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that. Annie talked about this quite a bit as well. Yes, it's a priority, and no, Scopus is not the perfect source. It's a great source for the sciences. It gets a lot of the peer review publications. It's getting better and better for social sciences, but again, it's mostly articles, a few books, increasingly book chapters. But yeah, we're always looking at ways, how can we get more data in for people in other disciplines or whose work for one reason or another is just not well represented there. Pure has a lot of other sources that you can import from. I'm actually today working on a project with our College of Design. They use, as many entities on campus do, a system that's really similar to Faculty 180. They use Digital Measures Activity Insight for faculty activity reporting. That college does use it, and they have a lot of things like exhibits, performances and things like that that are in there, and we're looking at how can we pull the data from there and add it into Pure Experts at Minnesota. It's a messier process than one might like, but it we can find ways to do it where people don't have to do double data entry. The biggest thing I think we're finding is that if the data are used, people will make an effort to make sure it's there, and we can help facilitate the ways to get it in more easily.
Thanks, Jan. We have lots of questions, so we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. So another one is, what were the criteria used to decide on Pure as opposed to other systems? Was there any concern with Elsevier and commercialization of their research data? Were there any protections negotiated in the license?
That's a huge, big question. I was going to wait for Annie to jump in on that one.
I can jump in if you'd like.
Yeah, why don't you take it?
Okay. Sure. So at Syracuse, when we were exploring the system to begin with, and I must admit that I was not part of the initial implementation team, so I don't have the full picture, but I do have the as told to me as I moved into this role, picture on it. We really were very, very focused on a system that would also include the grant opportunities, which I mentioned was a huge goal of ours at Syracuse. So that did really limit us to Pure. We did explore other commercial systems on our campus. It was not viable to go any route other than a commercial system. We do not have the IT support to do anything that involved lots of programming on our end or an open source solution or anything like that. So we were only looking at commercial solutions, and we had this one criteria that we were particularly interested in, which Pure met. So are we concerned about, working with Elsevier? I mean, it is definitely always part of the conversation, is what we're subscribing to, what we're not subscribing to, why we're subscribing to it. We do have the ability to use and reuse the data within Pure in ways that we would like to. We have ways to back it up. As Jan mentioned, at Minnesota, they're doing a fairly good job of keeping it in their data repository for other uses. So those are all things that we can do with the data. Do we have to have conversations with faculty about the fact that we've chosen this route? Absolutely. Faculty are also very aware of what's going on and whether they want to participate or not. Because at Syracuse, it is optional to participate in experts at Syracuse. We have had a few faculty members who say they're not interested in participating, and as long as they're not in a school or college that has mandated it, they do not have to participate. So there's my answer for that. If you have any more questions, we're happy to keep talking about it.
Thank you, Annie. And I'll just note that one of our participants wanted to, I think, chat with your colleague from the music library. So we'll just look to maybe connect you all offline afterwards.
Thank you.
And then a question from Malika. What are the primary uses you're seeing for the research impact metadata in your system?
So I think that depends on how you're going to define research impact metadata. What we're finding is a lot of different use cases for the data more broadly. So we have a lot of data, everything from mentoring to service activities to workload assignments. And what we're finding is a lot of institutional use, one, obviously for program review and accreditation reporting, but two, we're seeing campus-wide interest in looking at workload levels and gender and diversity differences across workloads and identifying if there are any trends or problems based on how people are reporting. We're looking at issues related to obviously publications and scholarly output, how many publications are people putting out, but also just how do I get a listing of all the different publications of people affiliated with our unit so that we can share that more broadly. We are looking at service data and how do we actually utilize that better internally so that if you have somebody doing research and you have somebody doing service or volunteerism, which is an optional category for people to report in, how do we connect those people better on campus so that they can consult with one another or help one another in these areas? So we have a lot of use happening through our APIs to feeds to local campus systems for different components of data. So it just depends on how you want to define the term research impact metrics. I should say the system is not doing what we would consider traditional impact metrics, such as H factors or journal impact factors or publication factors of that sort. It really is about discovery, about the work that people are reporting that they're doing, and understanding the importance of that work.
Thank you, Malika. I have a question. I think it looks like two related questions from Allegra Swift. How did it come about that the libraries partnered across campus? And she's sharing that the UC libraries are not partnering, but involved tangentially. And so there's some faculty pushback of AA resulted in collaboration. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. You going to jump in there?
Yeah. So I'm actually very aware of the UC implementation that's going on with the Faculty 180 system. And our role actually started from a scholarly communication standpoint. I was consulting on whether or not our library could help feed publication data to our RIM system. And I was there actually talking about the coverage, the lack of coverage for certain disciplines, alternatives for getting that coverage, what the pros and cons would be. And that was how we began, or I began in that, that conversational space, and then became project manager shortly thereafter, because I'd had a lot of project management experience with national projects, and my name had been put forward. Related to that, there is a lot of faculty pushback that happens anytime faculty feel like they are being monitored or tracked in any kind of way. And I can say that the conversational space, there's a lot of change management with these RIM systems, and it started from one of kind of big brother fear of how the data might be misused about our faculty, to now a space of, well, why aren't you tracking this, and just automatically feeding it to these other systems. And so there is a lot of data governance, there's a lot of privacy issue that has to be addressed in these systems, and it's very important to stay on top of those issues. There was also a lot of conversation from a scholarly communication standpoint. And I saw there was another question. We do not feed publication data into our system for our faculty. Our faculty have to either import it or enter the data themselves. And that has really caused the scholarly communications conversation around them managing their scholarly output better and being better prepared for how to import and export and work with their data, including ORCID. So I'll leave it at that, just in the purpose of time.
Thank you for getting to that question. We have another question about what is the success rate of the mechanism used to auto-populate your institution's research outputs? On average, how much time staffing is devoted to data remediation and enrichment?
And this is Rebecca. I'm going to pop in and quickly sort of say for Annie and Jan, if one of you could sort of provide a little bit of explanation about the metadata harvesting, and then what sources you use, and then the rest.
Okay, sure. So as has been mentioned, we with Pure, we're using a feed from Scopus. There is significant work that is done on the vendor side, on Elsevier's side, for refining the profiles in Scopus. So we get a nice clean feed. We, of course, find errors, but they're pretty rare. And it is pretty complete as far as, again, the disciplines where journal articles are the bread and butter, and those journals are generally covered in Scopus. We don't put a ton of time into looking through those and making sure they're clean. What we do, partly because there's just no way for us in the libraries to judge whether that's really that person or not. What we do is ask people to review their profiles and let us know when they spot problems, and they do. The other kinds of data that come in, yeah, we will import on behalf of faculty occasionally, usually when it's a larger group, like everybody involved in a center and they already have a Mendeley database or something like that. We've done projects where we import that. The data that comes in related to that's directly the publication data generally is pretty clean. The data around that, though, the external organizations, for example, that are part of the affiliations of co-authors that are not University of Minnesota, that's not so clean. And it depends on what we're hearing as far as usage. So I currently have a project where people would like to see who are we collaborating with worldwide. So therefore, we're looking at those external organizations a little more closely and doing cleanup where we can. I mentioned earlier we have one person who works part-time, 5 to 10 hours a week, doing that sort of cleanup project. So it's done on a as the need becomes big enough kind of basis. There's always more data cleanup one could do. I think we could probably all say that of our catalogs too. That's just part of the nature of the beast.
Thank you. Was that all that anybody wanted to add of the panelists before I wrap us up today? Thank you all for joining us, for our panelists, for our participants. Really, yes, was there an additional? For all of your questions and your attendance. We'll post a recording of this webinar online and we'll notify you by email when that's available, including the links shared today. This concludes today's webinar, and thanks so much for your engagement and your wonderful questions. Have a great day. Bye.